All right, everyone, this is not a drill. We just saw the United States Supreme Court deliver a stunning late-night decision in a case that's going to send shockwaves across the country. In a 7-2 ruling, the Supreme Court of the United States ordered the Trump administration to immediately stop the unconstitutional deportation of Venezuelan migrants. This kind of sweeping pushback from the court is rare, and it really speaks to how blatant these violations were. Order List 604 U.S. issued a one-paragraph ruling that essentially said, the Trump administration is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Now, let's remind ourselves, this court isn't exactly known for unanimous agreement, let alone siding with immigrant rights in a strong majority ruling. Yet here they are, taking decisive action to, quite frankly, call out what the administration was doing as illegal. And look, for anyone who might be thinking this is just another court ruling, it's not. This is big, like really big. It's not every day that the Supreme Court tells a sitting president to pump the brakes on such a core aspect of their policy agenda. Why? Because Trump's Department of Justice made it clear that they were going to yet again defy the courts. Play this clip.
A Maryland man who was mistakenly sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador. ABC's senior White House correspondent Lena Wang leads us off from Washington.
Tonight, a late-night showdown between President Trump and the judiciary. The Supreme Court blocking the deportation of some Venezuelan migrants accused by the Trump administration of being gang members under the Alien Enemies Act, a centuries-old law that provides little to no due process. The highest court ruling overnight on an emergency appeal from the ACLU, directing the administration to pause the deportations until further order of this court. The ACLU's lead attorney says the migrants received this notice and were told they'd be removed in 12 to 24 hours.
We're talking about the administration hurrying people to the plane to send them to the Salvadoran prison without any due process whatsoever.
A White House spokesperson telling ABC News, we are confident in the lawfulness of the administration's actions and in ultimately prevailing against an onslaught of meritless litigation brought by radical activists. The Trump administration first invoked the Alien Enemies Act in mid-March, deporting hundreds of Venezuelan migrants to 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, a notorious maximum security prison in El Salvador. At the time, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to stop the deportation flights, but they refused in apparent defiance of the order before a divided Supreme Court ultimately ruled they could continue. Among the deported, 𝐃𝐨𝐺'𝐵 Garcia, a father from Maryland who was mistakenly put on a plane.
He was traumatized by being at 𝐶COT and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks.
Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen just returning from El Salvador after meeting 𝐵 Garcia, saying he has since been moved to a different detention center. The Trump administration insists 𝐵 Garcia is actually a violent member of the MS-13 gang, but he has no criminal convictions. His family denies the association, and the administration has provided no evidence to the courts. The president attempting to bolster the claim by posting this photo on social media of what he says is 𝐵 Garcia's hand. But the MS-13 symbols appear to be superimposed, and it's not clear if the other tattoos have any links to the gang. The White House says 𝐵 Garcia will not be returned home, despite the Supreme Court ordering them to facilitate his release. Tonight, Senator Van Hollen firing back with a challenge. It's time for them to put up or shut up in court rather than on social media. This is not about one man. We are standing up for everyone's right to due process under the Constitution.
And Whit, tonight.
So let's get one thing straight. This wasn't some minor slip up or an overworked agency making a mistake. No, this was deliberate. The Trump administration knew these deportations were illegal. They knew, and yet they were preparing to send Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador of all places, blatantly ignoring not just one court ruling, but several, multiple. This isn't just a policy debate. It's defiance, plain and simple. And what makes this even more outrageous is the timing. Just days ago, the Supreme Court itself issued a ruling. Days. It's like the administration looked at that and said, nah, we're going to do things our way anyway. And you have to wonder, what message does that send? Are we okay with leaders just brushing off the highest court in the land when it doesn't suit them? That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Therefore, the ACLU escalated the case. SCOTUS stepped in to stop a constitutional crisis in real time. The message sent is clear. Trump, you are not above the law. Here's what really stands out about this ruling. It's not just the Supreme Court's decision. It's who made it. A 7-2 verdict from this Supreme Court. That's almost unheard of. This is a bench that's been ripped apart by ideological battles lately, where a single vote majority has become the norm. And yet, you got justices from both ends of the spectrum agreeing on this. That alone should tell us just how egregious the Trump administration's actions were. Think about it. Justices like Alito and Kagan hardly ever find themselves on the same side of a case. They don't. Their judicial philosophies are galaxies apart. Still, even they came to the same conclusion. You've got to ask, if these 9 people who can barely agree on lunch orders are standing together like this, what does that say about the weight of the evidence? About the seriousness of the violation? And let's be real, this ruling feels like more than just a legal rebuke. It's almost like the court is saying, enough. Enough of the disregard for precedent. Enough of the sidestepping the Constitution. This wasn't a debate about narrow technicalities or loopholes. This was a line the Trump administration dared to cross. And even the court's staunch conservatives, who have bent over backwards to appease Trump in the past, couldn't stomach it. There's no surprise who dissented. Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. The 2 men who have never met an authoritarian overreach they didn't simply adore. Their message, Constitution? What's that? All right, make no mistake. What we're seeing here is absolutely not normal. The Supreme Court, they just don't do this. They don't usually step in before an appeals court has weighed in. That's like skipping steps in the process. But here, they did. And why? Because clearly, this situation couldn't wait. The rule of law is literally hanging by a very thin thread. It's what we physicians would equate to an 1100 suture size thinness. Think about it. This isn't some court that just wakes up one morning and throws protocol out the window. They don't move like that, not unless the stakes are so high, or, honestly, the wrongdoing is so blatant that they feel they have no choice. This shows just how far outside the bounds the Trump administration has gone this time. The Supreme Court's sentiment was one of reprehension. We're not letting Trump dismantle constitutional governance. And let me tell you, this kind of urgency from the Supreme Court, it's practically a red alert. When they intervene like this, it's not about sending signals or clarifying legal points. It's about fixing something that's, well, actively breaking the system. They saw a line being crossed and decided, no, not this time. This isn't some one-off incident, folks. It's important to realize that this pattern, this outright disregard for the Supreme Court, didn't just start yesterday. And honestly, it's kind of chilling when you think about it. Let's take the 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐠𝐞𝐭 case, for instance. If you're not familiar, let me break it down for you. The court had ruled crystal clear that a migrant, 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿, held in detention abroad must be returned to U.S. custody. All right, sounds straightforward, right? You would think any administration, even one that disagrees, would follow the order. But no. Trump's folks basically just shrugged and kept the man locked up in a foreign prison. Can you imagine? That's not just ignoring a ruling. That's spitting in the face of the judiciary and essentially giving them the middle finger. And this wasn't some obscure lower court decision either. This was a directive from the highest court in the land, and still, they blatantly refused. Like they didn't even try to hide it. It's that kind of contempt, that audacity that sets such a dangerous precedent. Because once a leader decides that rules are optional, well, where does that end? So what's next? What are the ripple effects of this decision? Let's talk about the first major impact. This feels like an institutional breakpoint, a fracture. Even the justices who've been broadly sympathetic to Trump's agenda, well, they're peeling off. And that's big. It says they're drawing a line, one they're not willing to cross, even for him. And then there's the public backlash, which, let's be real, has been growing louder by the day. Americans are watching all this unfold, and for many, it's a wake-up call. They're seeing how these moves fit into something larger, this creeping authoritarianism that, well, doesn't feel so subtle anymore. And honestly, these kinds of rulings aren't just legal corrections. They're fuel for backlash. People are paying attention, and they're asking the hard questions. How did we even get here? And politically, this puts congressional Republicans in a tight spot, doesn't it? If they continue to shield a president who's openly flouting Supreme Court decisions, then where does that leave them? Because at some point, if they're defending this, they're not just bystanders anymore. They're complicit. They own it. This becomes their legacy too. And look, let's not dance around it. If this level of open lawlessness doesn't demand accountability, doesn't call for impeachment, then honestly, what does? The Supreme Court just sent a message, not just to Trump, but to the country, that we are not yet completely asleep at the wheel. This was an institutional scream. Enough. And honestly, it's moments like this that remind us how fragile democracy can be. I mean, the fact that we're even at a point where this ruling feels like a relief, it says a lot. It's almost like a wake-up call, you know? Because let's be clear, this isn't about politics anymore. It's about whether the rule of law means anything at all. And if the court is willing to call this out, even with all its divisions, then we'd better pay attention. This isn't just some headline. It's a turning point. All right, that wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I just want to take a second to thank each and every one of you for, well, showing up and tuning in. Honestly, your support, it really means more than you know. Because without it, these conversations, these deep dives into the headlines wouldn't be possible. And look, if today's episode made you think or even just raised a few eyebrows, then do me a favor. Share it. Tell a friend. Post it on, I don't know, whatever social platform you spend too much time on, and let others join in this conversation. And hey, drop a comment while you're at it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or maybe even what you'd like us to break down next. This show's for you as much as it is for, well, our democracy. But before you go, make sure to stay connected. Follow The Real 411 on all platforms and sign up for our email newsletter. You'll get updates, exclusive content, and honestly, a little extra dose of context that we all need in times like these. And for those of you who believe in independent media that isn't afraid to ruffle feathers and ask the tough questions, consider supporting us on Substack or Fanbase. We've got free and paid subscriptions, but either way, every bit helps keep this going. Because remember, the story, it's never just the headline. So until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and stay real. I'm Dr. 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭. Take care, everyone.